Good afternoon and welcome back to the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Dani Vittori, and today we have on Benji Wozniak, the author of Hodge Podge.
Thank you, glad to be on.
Great, glad to have you on. So we'll start off by just asking, how did you know that you wanted to be an author? How did you get inspired to be one?
Well, my dad was a poet, and he used to write poetry, and he'd read it to me. And I kind of started picking up poetry as a kid, and then in high school and junior high, I was writing poems for people so they could give their girlfriend, boyfriend, and significant other. So it was a fun time.
And the book that we're going to be discussing, Hodge Podge, how long has it taken you to write it?
About 15 years.
Okay.
It's been like bits and pieces here and there over the years, short stories, poems, and I just had it in a folder, and I never really did anything with it. And someone said, you should put it into book form. Some of the short stories and poems are interesting. So I finally got up enough courage to do it. So.
Yes. Well, we are very glad that you did. I got to read some of it, and I like it. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
And one of the things you mentioned was the cover art, actually, which another Lynner did as well.
Yes, Jamie Aylwin, he's from Lynn, Aylwin Arts. He did the cover art, and him and his girlfriend Allie did the editing inside the book. They did all misspellings or anything and corrected it, formatted it for the different styles of ebook, hardcover, softcover. So they did a lot for me.
You said editing is important.
Yes, it is. It's easy to throw stuff down on paper, but to make sure all the things are right, formatted is something I was not capable of doing.
And I saw, kind of looking at it's a mix of sort of first and third person stories. Some of them it's the writer or the person saying I. Other times it's more of third person. So how did?
So it's kind of funny. A lot of these stories are because friends of mine would say, you like to write? And I was like, yes. And they were like, well, can you make a story about a person with asthma that wants to be a serial killer, or, a relationship, or, the church inside of Pine Grove Cemetery? I was like, yeah, sure. So I just decided how I wanted to write those different styles.
Yes, it's a whole mix. And one of the big things in your book is how much of Lynn is mentioned.
Yes.
Goldfish Pond, Union Street, Dungeon Rock. You really focus on the history of Lynn.
Yeah. I grew up in Lynn. I'm a Lynner, so of course I'm on your show. And I think Lynn doesn't get the representation it deserves for the history that it has. It has such rich history, but people don't focus on the history. They tend to focus on the negatives, and it's not fair. So if they actually looked into Lynn's history, they'd be really entranced by it. High Rock Tower, Dungeon Rock, Egg Rock. There's so much out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you mentioned before that you used to go to Dungeon Rock when you were in elementary school.
Yes, Cobbett Elementary. One of my first field trips would be going to Dungeon Rock, and they'd tell us about the history, but there was these little rocks called the lemon squeeze, we used to call it, and we'd try to squeeze through it as kids. Couldn't do it now, wasn't too many donuts, but back then we could, but it was a lot of fun. And then we learned a little bit about the history, not much, and then later on in life I wanted to know more about it, so I dug into it, and about the pirates and the hidden treasure, and how it caved in, and I thought it was always fascinating.
Mm. Yeah. So I will ask, because I'm curious about this. You're using history, real Lynn history, but then you also have fictional stories. So how do you kind of combine that?
Well, it's kind of strange because I wrote this to be a continuation, to make more of a story. I want to make a bigger book, an alternate history. If you read it, it's got fantasy, dragons, elves, vampires, and it's kind of strange because the way I did it, I tied Dungeon Rock into Stone Tower, Iron Tower, and it actually it all fit together, because the hill that I believe Stone Tower is on is named after the same hill, or it was named after, they changed it, but it was the same hill that Moses was on, and so it all tied together. It was really, really, really interesting, and I didn't even know that until I actually started putting the book together. I was like, wait a minute, this actually does tie together, so it was pretty cool.
This actually makes sense. This works.
Yeah, I was like, it actually works, so it was a lot of fun.
That's always fun to figure out. As you said, Lynn it's a large city, there's a lot of places, so how did you sort of pick, I guess, which places to use?
Just randomly, they'd ask me questions, and they say, hey, can you write a story about like Stone Tower? Can you write a story? And I'm like, all right, I'll see what I can do. So I just started writing them down, and like one story really has nothing to do with any place in Lynn. It's Mr. Jangles, the Dangerous Mr. Jangles, and it was about a tinker. And they were like, you write one about a tinker? And I was like, what's a tinker? And I had to look it up to find out what a tinker was. And then I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. So I made it into a ghost story, and I used Lynn as its backdrop. And it was a lot of fun to like just use your creative mind. And it was just great.
It's always fun when someone asks you and you go, hold on, what is this first?
Yeah.
And then I'll do it.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, what? I don't know what that is, And it's just, for me, like writing, a lot of the times I didn't have the courage to want people to see it. I think that does with a lot of writers. They write stuff and they're like, no one's going to like this. And, they get afraid that they're not going to put the stuff out there. They're like, I can't do it because, no one's going to like it. And once you overcome that fear and you put it all together and get it out there, it doesn't matter because you did it. And that's the most important thing. You did it. I mean, I got a book in front of me, and this is mine, and I did it. And I had help by a lot of people, but at the end of the day, I have a book, and it's about Lynn.
Yes.
So that's a positive.
It is a book all about where you grew up, and you're right. It's hard to show your work to other people because you're thinking they're not going to like it. What if I did this? What if I did that?
Yeah, self-doubt is a killer. I mean, but once you overcome that and you just put your mind to doing it, it's a great accomplishment, And I hope that it inspires other people to reach their goals.
No, it definitely does. And I said I'm very impressed by it.
Thank you. I'm glad you like the stories. I mean,
I do.
Yeah, when I threw it out there, I was kind of, I don't know. And a lot of the stuff, like Goldfish Pond, Bucky jumping, I actually did that. Like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like we used to break the ice and like jump across it to get to the island and jump across back. And then there's a story where the wall on Lynn Beach, we actually did walk that during high tide, and the waves would come crashing over us and like try and pull us into the ocean. And like, I do not recommend this, by the way. I do not do this. But this is stuff we actually did. So I thought it would be cool to implement it into the book and like have the characters experience it.
Oh yeah, you're mixing in your own personal experience too.
Yes, yeah, like bumper jumping on cars during the winter, and sliding down the street. We really did this stuff, and it was fun. And dangerous, and don't do it, but it was fun, So I thought it'd be fun to put it into the book, and life experiences and alternate history together,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which makes stories more fun and interesting when it is your own personal experience, because you're speaking, what it's like.
Yeah, speaking from experience, And it was fun. And like a lot of the conversation in here, the banter between Tomei and Steve, like I actually had some conversations like that, and their relationship was based on like 17 different relationships I was in. So, but it made it work. So,
and I'll ask one quick thing. You mentioned about the cover art. Like I can see, it looks like High Rock Tower's on there. How did you sort of pick what to put on there?
So. Jamie, I had given him a bunch of pictures from Lynn, and he's like, we can't use that, we can't use that, we can't use that. You're just taking stuff off the internet and they can't use them. He's like, let me come up with something. And I said, well, I'd like to do something called Hodge Podge. I want it to be called Hodge Podge because Lynn is a hodgepodge of different cultures and ethnic backgrounds. So he basically put all this together. So this is all his work.
I do. I like it. It's hodgepodge, but it works.
Right, it works. It's like Lynn. They're all together, but we make it work.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask where the title came from, and you just told me about it.
Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense.
No, it does. The combining of all the different short stories, you said they work, though.
Yeah, and the poems, and like I said, there's 4 stories in there that I'm using to make a bigger story. Like I want to build an actual novel. I'm thinking of doing like a 3-book series. And so buy the book, and then you'll learn about like what I'm talking about, and then you'll see the world I'm trying to create. So,
I will ask, how did you choose the order of the stories in the poems? Like, is there a specific order?
I kind of went by what I liked, like the stories I liked the best. I was like, I like this story better. So I was like, I'll put this here. And I was like, I like this one too. And like, that's how I kind of did it. It was like what I liked. And then with the poems, I basically put them together as like I looked at what, like, some of them were about like Christmas, some of them about, you know, Salem, Revere, Lynn. So I just put all those together. The color poems I put all together, and it was just basically like looking at it and going, all right, I kind of want that there. I kind of want that there. This looks good here. And then, you know, I went with Jamie, and I'm like, what do you think? You know, what do you think about this order? And he's like, oh, I like that. So I was like, all right, well, this is what we'll do, and we'll move forward. So.
So you said so many of your stories are collaborative. You had people come up to you and say, hey, can you write this? Can you do that?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like, my friends, they would sit there and be like, he really did it, you know? And they're like, and it's not bad. And I'm like, it's not bad. And they're like, no, it's really good. And I'm like, not bad or really good? I'm like, be more specific. And they're like, no, it's really good. So it was fun, you know? And then, like I said, I had them in a folder, and I was like, and my friends were like, you need to put that into a book form and then, you know, publish it. And I was like, okay. And I did, you know?
Yes, you did. You made it. You have the book sitting right in front of you.
Yeah, and I have another book that I wrote, but I totally forgot about. And I had it in a closet, and like I pulled it out, and I'm like, what's this? And it's actually another book. So I'm like, oh, this is great. So I have to go through that and type it up and get everything done with that. So that was fun. So.
That's always fun when you just discover.
Yeah, because I mean, you get so busy in life that you forget about stuff, you know. And you know, you write stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, and you put it away, and then, you know, years later you pull stuff. What's this? I'm like, oh wait, I actually wrote this, you know, and it was when I was a kid. So, you know, it's not interesting to read it myself and go through it and see if what I can fix and make it better, and then, you know, get that out there too, which is also about Lynn. So.
It's very Lynn-centric, which is great.
Yeah.
There's so much history here.
Oh yeah.
So many stories.
Oh yeah, and like I really hope people, like other people from Lynn, do what I did. Like, make your own story, you know, and use Lynn. Use your backdrop. Use what you know. You know, rappers write songs about where they're from. Poets write poems about where they're from. So just, you know, do what you do. You know.
Definitely. And I want to thank you again for coming on to talk about your book.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. You know, it's very honorable for me to be here. You know.
And congratulations again on getting a book published.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Very welcome. And once again, I'm Dani Vittori. This has been the Lynn Lowdown, and we will see you next week with more guests.